So, good evening. Thank you for braving distances and joining me for this talk on living a mystical Christmas. So, as you know, we're very close to the winter solstice, and the winter solstice is like on the 21st, and the talk was planned to be as close as possible without interfering with the family plans. So tonight we will be covering several aspects. Some may be new for you, so don't hesitate to note your question mentally, and eventually there will be some time for you to ask your questions. And at the end of the presentation, I will guide you into a meditation for planet Earth. Okay? So my PowerPoint here starts with solstices and equinoxes. As you know, they occur with every season. So we have two solstices for winter and summer and two equinoxes for fall and spring. And it's not by coincidence that it's like this and that we have cardinal feasts that are recognized as being Christmas and Easter and Saint Jean Baptiste for the Quebecois, and Michaelmas, which is the feast of reaping in the fall. So it's symbolic, but also it's religious in a way. Tonight we won't cover the religious aspect. We will cover more the mystical and spiritual aspect of things. So the cardinal feasts are cosmic feasts because they carry an influence through nature, where nature participates into a movement of energies. And if we embark on this energy, we have an opportunity for tremendous growth. And why is Christmas with the winter solstice? Well, because it's the shortest day of the year. We are in the dark more than at any other time of the year. So there's reason why we also need to work with darkness. I know this will be new to many of you, but darkness is not just a symbol out of which the light is born. It also represents our inner matter that we need to work with. So when we talk about darkness, people think sometimes it's negative. But in fact, if you look at when you put a seed in the ground, it goes into darkness in order to grow its roots. And when gestation takes place, the mother carries the development of the child in darkness. So if we know how to use darkness, we can really go very deep and very far for our development. So now when we talk about events, whether they're cosmic events or historical events, we should be able to bring them inside and think of them as mystic event or mystical events as well. It is said, like those of you who know about Hermes Trismegistus, that a truth is truthfully true because it applies into all the realm of existence. So it's like in the cosmos, there is a blueprint and everything unfolds according to this blueprint, whether it's on the agricultural level, on the human level, on the angelical level, whatever. It's the same kind of principles that applies through all the realms. That's why they say it's a truth that is truthfully true. It means that you can verify its application on all levels. So what is interesting for us at the moment is because Christmas symbolizes the birth of Jesus on the historical point of view, but it also represents, on the mystical point of view, the birth of a new consciousness, the Christ consciousness. And it's important to distinguish the difference between Jesus the man and the consciousness he embodied from the year of 30 years old. Because Christ is not a person. Christ is a principle. It's a consciousness. It's an energy. And the only way we can really know it is through our own matter. Even if it starts with the dark matter, which means the prima materia of the alchemist is like the raw dark matter. But that's where we have to start in our awakening, to start working with our inner matter. So in the cosmos, everything is based on the same pattern, like the same blueprint I told you. So there's the masculine principle, the feminine principle. Both are equally important. And I'm not talking men and women here. I'm talking about the cosmic, the great eternal masculine, feminine. The masculine is emissive. It's manifesting as the seed, the impetus, and the feminine is the receptive. Look our anatomy. The man, it's represented by being emissive. The woman is represented by the two. Those of you who know the tarot card, she's the papess with the book open, which symbolizes receptivity. In nature, we find this as electricity and magnetism. When you get the male and female together, you create the child, the seed, and the formative power that the feminine or the women have, which attracts the magnetism to form that child. So that principle, eternal masculine, eternal feminine, we have to learn to use these. We each have those within us to produce the child or the Christ consciousness. But it's also for anything. And I will get to it later when I say it's with everything and anything. You will see. So in nature, we have the electricity, which is masculine, the magnetism, which is feminine. The two together, they produce movement, just like the masculine, feminine produce the child. In our human structure, since we are part of the blueprint, it's represented by the intellect, the heart, and the willpower. So the idea, hello Journey, the idea is to work with these principles so that in our mystical life, in our psychic realm, we develop wisdom and love. And when we develop wisdom and love, we live in truth. So, okay, I won't jump ahead of myself. Now this is very interesting. These are Black Madonnas. I don't know if you've ever heard of Black Madonnas. I don't know if you see well over there. If you don't see well, take the chairs, there's some tea, you can help yourself. It is said that there's about 450 Black Madonnas. In France alone, there's 272. 180 of them are in the southern part of France. They are mostly found in the crypt down below, and it goes with the symbolism. What do the Black Madonna represent? They represent that black matter of the alchemist. The alchemists had to start in their crucible with an inorganized matter or dark matter, and they had to heat it and burn it, and it would be black like a crow, and until the transmutation took place in order to come to the philosopher's stone. That stone is to give them the power to change base metal into gold, to have the elixir of immortal life. Not that I want to go into the alchemy part of it, but I want to come back to the Black Madonna, because the Black Madonna represents us, each one of us, with the black matter, which is our kind of inorganized energy that has not yet been sublimated It has not gone into the crucible through renunciation, suffering, sometimes even compression of issues in life until we are heated enough that the light goes on inside. It's not that it's necessary to go through the suffering. It's under the label of ignorance that the suffering comes. But the alchemist, and at one level we are the alchemists were able, through their patience and their long work, to not only work with their crucible and that matter, but to work on themselves. None of them could actually discover the Philosopher's Stone unless they also transformed their own matter. That meant who they were, their ego, if you want, somewhere in there. So the Black Madonnas, and you can see that the child is also in dark, and that child represents the Christ consciousness that we have to give birth to. So it comes also with the symbolism of the darkness, that the Christ child, the second birth that we need to give to our consciousness, comes from the darkness, the ignorance of how to proceed to make that child the Christ consciousness. So far, so good. If you're lost, don't worry, you'll have a chance to get back with some of the drawings we have. So here we go with the prima materia, the first matter. Now, there's a reason why cosmic intelligence didn't give women to give birth to children through the top of the head. The children are born from the womb where the darkness is. It means these part of us, the lower part of us, it's like what it represents on the psyche is the lower part of our egos need to be worked with and transmuted so they start serving the purpose of growth and development. When women form the child, they don't consciously, deliberately put the elements in there. Because of their nature, their receptivity, their magnetism, they draw the elements that allows the child to develop kind of automatically according to a blueprint. It's same with the seed. You don't have to add the calcium, the magnesium, you don't have to add the elements. You just put the seed in the ground and it will attract the right element and produce according to its species. So it's very well done. The system is like absolutely smart. So when the alchemist works on his crucible to make the Philosopher's Stone and at the same time work onto himself, he is heading towards that transmutation that will not only allow the raw matter to become the Philosopher's Stones, but for him to experience a state of being that is so incredible, but they hid how to get there because they realized it was hard work, and because the way of the church at the time, the way of the system, it was better not to reveal too much. So they used a lot of symbolism to explain the process. For us, we're not wanting to be alchemists with the raw matter that they were working on, but we're willing to work on ourselves so that we can experience a transformation in our consciousness. So, you remember when we talked about the eternal masculine and the eternal feminine, we talked about being emissive and being receptive, and that the intellect represents the masculine, the heart represents the feminine, and the willpower is like the result of a balanced intellect with a balanced heart. Well, you see here, when the intellect balances with the heart, it brings truth or sets the will into action. The intellect on the psychic level or mystical level is the wisdom, the love, and the truth. The masculine, the feminine, they bring the child. The fire, the water, they bring energy. Most of us were more like this. We are an obtuse triangle, sometimes an obstinate triangle, because either our will is too developed and we just run into things without thinking, without feeling, and then there's dire consequences, or either we're too sensitive on the heart level and we don't have the discernment, and then of course there's a lot of suffering that comes with that. Or either we have a very strong intellect developed, we become cold, sometimes so rational nobody can really follow all the blah blah that goes on with the intellect. So it is important in our crucible, in our inner temple, that we learn to balance ourselves. That we have three keys: the intellect, the heart, and the willpower. Which key is good to use at which time? So if you realize something that throws you emotionally, it's not time to call your heart. Your heart is already flooded. It's time to either call your willpower or your reason, your intellect, to rebalance what the heart is going through. And when you're plowing through things where your willpower is so engaged that you're blinded by your drive, then it's time to draw back, go back within, and bring more of the heart and the reasoning. And this is a work that belongs to each one of us. There's nobody out there in charge of that. It's like your own crucible. You have to work to balance these elements and to solve problems with these. When normally we start with the intellect because our education has driven us to be very energetic on this level. So okay, so we think things through. And then we should be able to bring them into the heart and balance them with the reason. And when we balance these two, then we can go and act. And it's symbolized by the balance of the two, that we should have good action or truthful action. So this is each our work. This is how we get to have the best condition for our consciousness to be in a position. And I'll go even further than this. You know how you have the left hemisphere, the right hemisphere, and how many people suffer, what's this condition?
Bipolar? Bipolar?
When they shift too fast from the left to the right. ADHD, or there was another one, it escapes me at the moment. But when you work with your wisdom and your love, you already balance the two hemispheres of the brain. And that's important because when you are in good balance in your brain, your mind will see clearer through issues. So now, okay, we talked about the mind, the heart, and the willpower. But the other thing that we need to know is that we're not alone. Within ourselves, we're not alone. We have a lower self, the will, the heart, the intellect, which is linked to the physical, astral, and mental body. But there's another part of us, the higher nature in us, which is made up of more subtle energies. People who are clairvoyant, they can see the aura of these bodies when they're developed. Most of us were busy here because our education, because the way we live, we have not gone to inquire or if we have gone to inquire, we may not have put this into proper perspective. This system actually belongs to the Hindu philosophy, but it's applicable to any philosophy because all of us are built on the same pattern. So when we have the intellect here, it's connected to the higher intellect, and that's called the causal body. And your thoughts at this level are not egoistic thought. They are thoughts that are more impersonal. It's like you're starting to see the fabric of the higher mental realm. It's the world of prototypes. If you know what prototypes is, it would be like before something is invented here as a machine or as a device, it has its prototype in the causal world. And many of the inventors, that's where they go and get their inspiration. And they invent incredible things because they go into the world of prototypes. And that doesn't really belong to anybody in particular. To the heart is linked the soul, or what they call the Buddhic body. And those are tremendous feelings of compassion. It's above anything that you would wish personally. It comes to like being at a cosmic level. And then to the will is linked the spirit, the atmic body. When these bodies are developed, you are into your individuality. And I like these two terms, personality, individuality, because the personality is like at the theater, the role you're playing on the scene. You're like fighting an enemy on the scene, but then behind the play, it's your buddy that you're with. So it's like you're playing a role here. All this, we're playing a role. It's not our true self. Here it's like behind the scene when all the artists are buddies between them. It's like the individuality. It's the I am. It's our true self. So when we talk about a second birth, that's where we want to integrate this. But if we don't know, so knowledge is like so primary, it's like the seed. And once you have a seed, you need to have the ground. You need to have the verticule, the womb, which is the receptivity that will attract the elements for the manifestation. So you have a desire to be close to your higher self, to embody your higher self. That's like your seed. And then your energy, your receptivity, your feminine will draw the elements to bring about the manifestation. So you see how it applies on all the levels with the same blueprint, with the same laws. It's so fantastic. So when we talk about the second birth, we talk about this supra-consciousness, what they call the Christ consciousness. They call it the cosmic consciousness. They call it the Buddhic state. They all are relevant to the same. It's the embodiment of the higher self. The higher self coming to dwell, and from there, well, yes, it does take a lot of effort, but it follows the blueprint of creation. Then we need to learn how to use polarities, because we have both within us, in order to attract the particles that will help the manifestation of that consciousness. This is ahead of what I want to say. I want to come back to the polarities. In the physical plane, we know that man is emissive and that a woman is receptive because our anatomy represents this. But on the astral level, maybe I'll come back to the previous. On the astral level here, on the feeling body, a woman is emissive, a man is receptive. Try to keep this in mind for a moment. Then if you go to the next level up, the man is emissive on the mental level and the woman is receptive. So you can see it goes like this. The polarities crisscross, and we have the opportunity to consciously choose to move from one to the next. So when we are receptive, whether you are a man or a woman, when you are receptive, you have to know what you are receptive to, which means you need a masculine principle to put a thought in your receptivity. Otherwise, your receptivity is like there's no seed to carry that which the ability of that feminine receptacle or the womb, it doesn't have a seed yet. So with your mind, you can choose to have a thought, which is a thought such as embodying your Christ self. If you don't like the term, you can use your higher self, and bring it into your feminine side, into your heart, your feeling, so that it can start attracting the particles to manifest that. And we can each do it. You know when you are in a receptive state. You know when you are in an emissive state. Just watch your planning. Just watch your movement. You'll know right away in which mode you are, if you are emissive or receptive. And when we talk about the second birth, we're talking about something that is not about a little wish of a Cadillac or a nice boyfriend. We're talking about moving up to these levels here. So the Holy Spirit is represented as fire, the flame, fire. So what does fire need in order to form, to manifest? It needs the universal soul. I'm taking you into this level here, okay? And you will say, what is the universal soul? Well, the best way I can describe it is, you remember in the book of Genesis, it is said, on the first day, God created the light. And then on the fourth day, he created the sun and the moon and the stars. Wait a minute, what was he talking about the first day? What kind of light was he talking about? And that's where we need to understand that what he created was like a substance emanating from him that is like the ether. It's like the etheric. We don't see it, yet we bathe in it. It's everywhere around us. What is missing is our understanding of it, our awareness of it. So when we think of manifesting our higher self, it's like that spirit, that spark of light, needs to come through this substance called the ether in order to bring about a manifestation. So if you are very, very decided to work on manifesting your higher self, it means to take time to go up to this level of peace and quiet, where you can visualize like a flame coming, and you open yourself into that ethereal substance that is everywhere around us, and you just bathe in it and let spirit do the work, or that flame do the work. Just like the mother who lets the formative power create the child or form the child, so are we on the spiritual level, have to be still and allow that flame to come into that universal soul in which we bathe, and let it form that new consciousness. Are you following me? Does that make sense? With all the different levels? Okay. So when we live into our higher self, sometimes we have a glimpse of it through our intuition, through our premonition, through our dreams. We seem to have a connection. It's like, oh, like things are, we say it. We say the light came on. It's like something happened inside that all of a sudden you understand something you did not before. Well, the day we will live with our true self, with our higher self, we will be in the point where we won't have to seek, we will find. Because we will be floating in that divine wisdom. We won't have to ask, and we will be given. What does the heart want? The heart wants to be loved. The heart wants to be warm. What does the intellect want? It wants to see the light. It wants to have methods to understand things. But at this level, you don't have to seek, you don't have to ask, you don't have to knock. All the doors will open. Because it's this higher principle, this higher self will be operating through. And it's not the ego. The ego is like quiet, serving, being willing, has the physical energy to go forward and do things, but it doesn't want to be the driver anymore. It has learned to be the servant. So it's not that we have to negate the ego or despise the ego. It's just that we have to learn its cunning ways. We have to learn its motivation. We have to catch it at the right time and redirect it for a greater cause, which is our own cause, the cause of being better beings, of being more aligned with our thoughts, aligned with our feelings, and aligned with our actions. The ego doesn't measure any of this. The ego wants immediate satisfaction. The ego wants always to have, oh, me, myself, and I, and pull the blanket my way. It's the nature of the ego. It has been like this for thousands of years. And of course, we went to school, but we learned nothing about this. So now, if we want to work on ourselves, we need to recognize that little child inside that is always wanting its way and say, it's okay. I'll give you a little piece of chocolate or something, but now come and work with me. So it becomes a great servant because it has a lot of energy. It has built up a lot of history of abilities to do things. But when it gets to this level of the higher self, it is subdued, it is happy to be a good servant, and all the doors open, all the answers come. It's like everything comes easy. So, we are a spark of God, meaning that we were made up from that substance that emanated from Him. You know the snail? You wonder, how does it build its house that it carries with it everywhere it goes? Well, on the same principle, it's again the blueprint is the same at all levels, all dimensions, is the snail emanates a substance that is first invisible, and it condenses, it hardens until it becomes its shell. So we are made on the same principle. So when we say we are a spark of God, is we have that substance from which He emanated. It's just that we've lost any awareness of it. We don't know. We haven't been taught. We haven't learned. We haven't practiced. So we remain separated. And this separation is what has caused where humanity is at the moment. Entrenched into matter to the point that they have forgotten they're children of God, that we are brothers and sisters. And it's time to wake up. It's a great awakening opportunity that we're going through, We are in the lowest of the cycles of the evolutionary plan because we're so materialized. We have only one direction. It's to go back up into the evolution. We were involution. We were coming down into matter to the point that we have lost where we come from and where we're supposed to go. So now, with this knowledge, with the fact that we are cosmic beings, we have the potential of that Christ consciousness. And it's the awakening that we must do. It won't come from any outside efforts. It will not come from churches or governments, or it will come from our own decision, from our own efforts, from our own awareness, and being dedicated to it and doing what needs to be done in order to reach our higher self. Where did I take my source of information? 2 little books. Christmas and Easter in the Initiatic Tradition and the Second Birth by Omar Mikhail Ivanov. I have been a disciple of his teaching for many years now, and I try to conduct my life by what I'm learning, what I'm reading, what I'm practicing. So before we go into a meditation, I'm going to stop the recording and I will take your questions.